Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by sending my condolences to all the families and friends of victims of the terror attack in New Zealand last week. The terrible events in Christchurch should remind us all there is no place for hate, and I pay tribute to the way in which Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has responded with such dignity and such compassion to this crisis, and I absolutely agree with the comments of the Prime Minister concerning the events at Stanwell and Utrecht. And I'm sure the whole House will join me and her in sending our deepest sympathies to all those who lost their loved ones and homes in the terrible cyclones that have caused devastation in Mozambique, Zimbabwe and Malawi. I support the government in sending £6 million of aid. I hope, if more aid is required, we will be able to respond urgently and generously to any demand for help from people that are so desperately suffering at the present time. Mr. Speaker, we're now in the midst of a full-scale national crisis. Incompetence, failure and intransigence from the Prime Minister and her government have brought us to this point. Parliament has rejected her deal. It's rejected no deal. The Prime Minister now has no plan. In an effort to break the deadlock, I've held meetings with members all across the House, and I'm having further meetings today to find a compromise that supports jobs and living standards. Tomorrow, I'm meeting EU Prime Ministers and officials in Brussels. This, Mr. Speaker, is a national crisis. Will the Prime Minister meet me today to discuss our proposals as a way forward to get out of this crisis?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, it's a bit rich him standing up and inviting me to meet him when for days and days he refused to meet me. And when for days and days he refused to meet me, and he then refused to allow the Shadow Brexit Secretary to have a further meeting with the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Of course, I'm always happy to meet members across this House to discuss the issue of Europe, but I do note that opposition party leaders, when they came out from the meeting with the Leader of the Opposition, made it clear that what they didn't want was Brexit. We should be delivering Brexit for the people of this country.
Corbyn! I'm not sure there was an answer to my question there, actually, Mr. Speaker. I wanted no deal taken off the table. The House has taken no deal off the table. It's time the Prime Minister took no deal off the table. Mr. Speaker, the CBI said the extension vote is a welcome dose of common sense. Put in place a new process, drop the red lines. Every MP must show leadership through compromise. Will the Prime Minister drop the red lines? Is she prepared to compromise to get through this crisis?
The right honourable gentleman talks about decisions that have been taken by this House. I'm sure it won't have passed you by, Mr. Speaker, that of course this House has voted on and rejected a second referendum. It has voted on and rejected no deal. It has voted on and rejected Labour's deal. It has voted on and rejected a customs union. And it has voted on and supported leaving with a deal. It's time this Parliament faced the consequences.
Jeremy Corbyn! Mr. Speaker, the last time the Prime Minister tried her meaningful vote, she only managed 242 votes, slightly up on the previous attempt, but nevertheless a decisive rejection. Our plan received 296 votes, rather considerably more than that. Mr. Speaker, her government is in chaos. She's ignored the House, ignored trade unions, ignored businesses and ignored the concerns of communities all around the country. She told the House that the EU would only allow an extension of Article 50 if there was a clear purpose. She's travelling to Brussels tomorrow morning to meet the EU summit leaders. What is her clear purpose?
I think if the right honourable gentleman had listened to the answer I gave to the first question that was posed in PMQs, he would have heard that.
Well, it wasn't clear at all, Mr. Speaker, other than she's going to try again with what we'll now term MV3. Surely, after two big rejections by the House, she must have noticed there isn't much support for the deal that she negotiated.